welcome, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Kelly Wenzel, CMO of Andela, and I'm thrilled to host you for today's webinar. Hope you enjoyed the lobby music. Every month we have decided to feature a local artist from somewhere in our global talent marketplace, and today we were featuring a hit by Vic West out of Kenya. So today we're here to talk about global remote, conducting performance reviews with a global remote team. So today we have more than 1 in 4, 27% of tech workers are remote, and 83% of enterprises say that number will increase or stay the same in the next 6 months. So when you're operating in that kind of environment, how do you conduct a talent review for a remote workforce? What changes, or what doesn't change? So we'll talk about that today, and we'll also share some recent learnings from Andela's own recent talent reviews from our global remote engineering team. So with that, I am thrilled to introduce our panelists for today's discussion. Alvaro Oliveira, Mihai Petcu, and myself, Kelly Wenzel, your moderator for the session. So Alvaro, let's just do quick bios for our speakers. Alvaro is the Chief Talent Officer and SVP of Engineering of Andela. Alvaro has over 15 years of engineering experience. He's accelerated small businesses like Huggable and Bold from concept to revenue within months, as well as transformed large enterprises like the Bristow Group. And he has spent the last decade building technology to support global technical talent marketplaces. Welcome, Alvaro. And Mihai is the people business partner for the Andela engineering team. So Mihai has spent the last decade in HR, partnering with leaders and managers from product and engineering and guiding and advising them on people strategy. And myself, your moderator for the session, Kelly Wenzel. I am a 6-time CMO. I have spent many years in B2B and B2B2C technology, and I am now a little bit more than 6 months into my tenure at Andela. So thank you all for being here. Of course, we would love to keep this conversation interactive. If you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A tab in the console on the lower left. And if you're so inclined, feel free to show the panelists some love with the emoji reactions in the bottom of the console. And before we dig into the topic, I am going to take just 60 seconds, literally, to provide a brief overview on Andela for those of you who might not be familiar with our company. So Andela was founded on the premise that brilliance is evenly distributed, but opportunity is not. And so we set about building a global tech talent marketplace, which is now approaching more than 150,000 skilled engineers from around the world. And we're helping enterprises tap into new talent pools, specifically in Africa and Latin America. And so this entire approach is powered by the Andela Talent Cloud. This is a unified platform that makes it easy to source, qualify, hire, manage, and pay global talent across borders anywhere in the world. And customers engage with us in a number of different ways, whether you want to hire an individual, hire an entire team, or engage us for a fully managed service, like a turnkey deliverable. Andela has served more than 600 clients with a 96% match success rate. So with that, I will say, given our business model, it might not surprise you that Andela employs a fully distributed remote engineering team. So Alvaro, great, jumping off point for this conversation. Could you give us an overview of what your engineering team looks like and how that structure perhaps influenced your approach to conducting talent reviews?
Hey, Kelly, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Hey, everyone. I'm glad to be here to be talking about how we've done the performance review for our engineering team. Let's start with some context. As we can see on the slide, our remote engineering team is quite distributed. We're in 19 countries, 5 regions, and 10 time zones, which is quite a lot to manage on the day-to-day. And people also travel. Right now, we have somebody spending a few weeks in Australia, which makes it very interesting to be navigating and communicating with them. The bulk of our team is generally in LATAM and Africa, though. As I'm talking to other leaders across the industry, and I mentioned such a distributed team, generally the question I get is, how do you make sure things still get done on a day-to-day basis? How do you make sure the team is even bonding? How do you build that camaraderie between people on the team? And those are very interesting questions. And first, on the work getting done, I really feel it's more straightforward than a bunch of people generally perceive it as. And that comes from the fact that working remotely blends itself really well with like having all of the work documented and done through proper systems. So we've become very good at using Jira for our engineering team and making sure that what we need to work on is clear, who is working on what is very clear, which just has optimized our team incredibly. And now we're at a point where, unlike the standard, our engineers actually enjoy Jira and they're happy to have it and find all of the documentation of what they need to do in a single place. And building the human bonding that is quite important to our jobs. Work is what most of us do for most of our lives. So connecting with people you really like and care about is important. And that's where we do allow for the team and even push from our side to make sure that they have team meetings that are more easygoing. We sometimes meet to drink mate, which is a common Argentinian drink, together as a team and talk about things that have been happening in our personal lives as well, along with lessons learned from work and just helping the team upskill as part of that journey. So I truly believe that being a global distributed team not only allows us to be more effective, but also brings so much value even in the bonding. Because frankly, hearing some of the stories of our team member that is just spending a few weeks in Australia, it's really, really interesting. A lot of learning for everybody on the team and learning about the culture of one another is incredible as well. Not to mention all the interesting soccer jokes between Brazilians and Argentinians, but I'll leave that for another day.
Or race car jokes. I remember that one too.
Correct, yes. All right, but today we're going to be focusing on talent reviews and how to do that for a global distributed team. And before we go to it, I would love to understand from the audience, how distributed is your team? Are you running a fully global remote team? Are you doing global hybrid? Are you doing local hybrid? Local in the office? Is everybody still going to the office? Or are you unsure? You're still trying to figure it out. It's different across different parts of your organization.
Let's give everybody just another moment to weigh in here. I'm really interested. This is such a hot topic in the business press, in Slack channels. I mean, LinkedIn, you see stories about this all the time. I'm curious to see what the mix looks like from our audience. Where are we on the results?
I think it was still early. We only have one or two. Go ahead and click directly on the screen. You can pick the answer right, best fits your company. So let's leave it up for a few more seconds, so folks can make their selection, and then we can I'll switch over to see the results.
All right. That is interesting. Glad to see global remote is a big part of it, but we do have some unsure in the audience, which is great. Really excited to be talking to people and helping them navigate this. With that, I think that's a great segue for me to transition over to Mihai, who has conducted the talent reviews with us. So Mihai, I'll let you take it from here and speak to our approach on doing talent reviews.
Thank you, Alvaro. And thanks, Kelly, for having me here. Yes, I work really closely with Alvaro's team to develop and conduct our talent reviews. Because we're a remote first and distributed organization, we've built an assessment that gives us a deeper and more nuanced understanding of our talent and how we connect to our business needs. What you see on the left side of your screen are the 6 rating criteria we use for our roles and employees. We look at performance in 2 ways. We look at what you're doing in terms of meeting KPIs, reaching goals, but also how you do it. And this is where we look at our company values and our competencies. We look at criticality of role and criticality of talent, and we also look at potential and retention risk. So we start the process by discussing biases with our leaders. Recency bias, halo effect, similar to me bias, and a few others. And this is a reminder to ensure that results are as close to reality as possible. Ideally, this is what we want to do, is to get a really good picture of the reality, what's going on right now in our teams. So the leaders do prep work by rating individuals against each criteria. And then we have a calibration session where leaders discuss and challenge these ratings. During the calibration, to connect with our business context and our needs, we use different views to digest the information. And you can see that on the right side of the screen. We look at, for example, critical talent that has a high retention risk. The assumption there is that we're at risk of losing this critical knowledge of skills, and that will be detrimental to the company. We look at a critical role with a low performer. The impact of a low performer in this role could have an outsized impact on the business. And then we look at performance in a few different ways. We look at top performers with high retention risk, performance overall with potential, and of course, we look at our low and inconsistent performance. What this gives us is the opportunity to identify our top performers, our strengths, but also any gaps that we may have and we need to address. This approach is tailored for our distributed organization. It gives us the confidence of knowing that our needs can be met, our organizational needs, but also that our employees are getting what they need from us, either a new challenge or help to improve. Right, so what we did next was to compare our results to what we've learned from our past experiences. And generally, these weren't remote-first organizations. So what we did was we took our results and applied them to a 9-box, as that's most commonly used tool for talent reviews. And speaking from experience, in a typical 9-box, you'll see an average distribution with about 20% of high potential employees at the top. That's what you see on the top row. And about 10% of them at the bottom. That's potential, right, across the bottom. Performance usually has a similar expected distribution with 20% top performers, what you see on the right column, and then 10% low performers all the way to the left. And this tool it's normally used to identify future leaders, performance management cases, core employees, folks who can become mentors for new employees, and people who are ready for a promotion. So now, looking at a standard distribution for a 9-box, I'm curious to see, what do you think that Andela, how Andela's results varied, considering with our global remote team? Do you think there were mostly high performance scores, high potential scores? Were they similar? Was it lower potential, lower performance? Really curious to see how you think our distribution varied than a normal distribution. So go ahead, just like the last quiz, go ahead and click directly on the slide. We'll give you a few seconds to do so.
I don't think I could have predicted. I was interested to see the results. I'm not sure I would have predicted it properly. See if the audience is more prescient.
Mm-hmm. I see a few results, a few people clicked already. Let's give a few more seconds for everybody else to click in, and we'll reveal the poll results. And after that, we'll reveal our results. All right, let's see what the audience said. Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So half the people thought it would be identical. Like, we're not going to see a change. And then the others, like, were split. Some thought we'd be more higher performance, and some thought we'd see higher potential. Interesting.
All right. So let's see what we had. Interestingly, about 50% of you were right. 25% of you were right. What we found in our distribution was quite different. Was that 40% of our team ended up being in that high performer spot, right? So you can see the boxes across the top row. How do we explain this? Well, this helped validate our core belief that brilliance is evenly distributed while opportunities are not. Being a distributed team allowed us to tap a much wider and deeper talent pool than a team hiring locally. With access to a diverse pool of candidates, this gives us a much higher probability of finding precisely the type of profile we want for the job.
Yeah, so I would love if you guys could actually, let's make this real, right, for the audience. And I would love, can you give me an example of a specific role where you were, evaluating this like broader talent pool, and what was your criteria and the consideration set, and how did you go about it? Like, I think it would just be helpful to dig in there a little bit.
Absolutely. Let's have a look at one of our recent hires in the engineering team, Claudia. This happened earlier this year. We were hiring for an engineering manager role. We don't have physical offices. We're fully remote. So instead of looking locally, let's say Des Moines, Iowa, where the hiring manager is located, we look globally. We were looking for someone with 5 to 7 years experience as a manager, a background in multinationals, and with specific experience in accessibility, which is quite a niche skill. With these criteria, we then evaluated talent across our global marketplace with emphasis on LATAM, Africa, and Eastern Europe. Our short list included candidates from Brazil, Argentina, Kenya, Nigeria, and Croatia. And at this point, the hiring manager has some choices. He has some decisions to make. How would the time zone overlap affect the team? Where was the best skill set match against the needs for the role? And how does all of this fit within our budget? So we went with Claudia because it was the right mix of variables that solved our needs. It was the right type of profile that we were looking for.
I like to call out in this process that at the end of the day, what's going through the hiring manager is thinking about the probability of being able to find the talent that they need. And when you're bound to a specific location, that probability goes lower. In the example of Claudia, we wanted somebody that had experience with accessibility. That is not something you can find widespread across this industry, and makes it a lot harder to find. Though, because we are looking at around the globe for the right talent, we ended up with a significant pool of talent that we could look at and see if they were the right fit for us, and then found in Claudia, which was great.
And then you guys as the hiring team get to make the trade-off on, as Mihai said, like time zone overlap or language or even cost, and then weigh those variables once you ticked all the boxes that you needed on skill set?
Correct. Yes. It makes the life of the hiring manager a little bit harder to have such a great pool to look at, but certainly better for the business overall.
Good problems to have.
Absolutely. And it's really overall, when you look at the wide team, what this gives us is a group of talented individuals that we can pick to lead our most challenging initiatives. So if you think at that 40% of the team in the high performing, high potential area, we know that we have employees that can grow and take on more scope in their roles, or change roles completely and have the same impact or more. So the flexibility that we offer is now being returned. So let's go back to the talent review process and kind of wrap up what happens next, figuring out next steps. And these are what you would usually expect, right? We look at, decide how to reduce criticality of talent, how to reduce retention risk, and understand and narrow down specific actions for top and low performers. But as we're speaking about an engineering team specifically, some of the actions that we took in that directions are connected to bringing an objective measure of how the team is doing from a skills perspective. Alvaro, I'll switch it back to you to share how we use qualified, and that allowed us to do just that.
Thanks, Mihai. So qualified turned out to be a really interesting addition to Andela. And generally, when you think of a tool like a qualified and you look at what it does, you're thinking around assessment in people joining your team. But we've been able to leverage qualified in a very novel and interesting way, which is leverage the tooling that we have to understand where's our team at as far as their skills and their ability to operate with the programming languages or frameworks that we need to fulfill the product roadmap that we're working with. We've used that not only with our internal team, but also with clients to help them understand and, again, do the same, connect product roadmap to the abilities of that engineering team and be able to understand where am I as a team when it comes to the skills that I have, and where do I need to invest more into upskilling and reskilling. What we see on the screen here is how we were able to conduct a test with one of our clients around how was the team faring in Java. And this is a client that had a monolith built in Java for many, many years, and the team did quite well. They're used to Java, they use it on their jobs on a day-to-day basis. For that same client, though, they're looking to migrate over to a microservices approach using JavaScript as their core programming language. And through Qualified, we were able to see that their team is not as balanced in JavaScript as it is in Java. And that has enabled us to partner with those talent from that client that needed a little bit more support and help and training on JavaScript so that they could be up to par and be on the same level as needed, allowing the team managers to distribute tasks across the team evenly and continue to work through the product roadmap at the speed that they're used to when they have been using mainly with Java. A quick call out on some of the key things that Qualified also helps us understand. It's not only just about how much a person understands of the programming language at hand, but also how are they applying critical thinking using that programming language. What is the quality of the software that they're able to produce with that programming language? So it goes beyond just the basics of, do you understand how to read the manual of a given programming language, but are you an effective user of it, building business applications?
So theory, and with the coding challenges, then you get practice, right? Like you get practical examples of work product.
Correct. Yeah. It's testing people on their ability to literally deliver business value, and not only checking, can an engineer do the fastest algorithm possible? That matters, but not over business value for most of our clients and the business needs that we even have ourselves.
Yeah, a bit of context I would just say to add for the audience, you may not be aware, Andela acquired Qualified.io in the first quarter of this year, and the platform is now fully integrated into the Andela Talent Cloud. We're obviously really excited about this, as Alvaro mentioned, not just for the use case to help you assess talent that you're looking to hire, but as a tool for existing teams to apply to get a read on, okay, what's the baseline for our existing team against a given skill set. And I think this is really compelling because what we're seeing from like leading firms, McKinsey, Gartner, McKinsey's research said that 82% of global executives expect that reskilling and upskilling would account for at least half the solution to their skill gap. And I don't have the Gartner stat handy, but they've just published new research saying the same, like that for CIOs, this challenge on upskilling and reskilling is top of mind for them. And the idea that you can have a tool to help you assess this is pretty interesting. So I wanted to say that we are extending an offer for any of the attendees at the webinar today. If you are so interested, we are going to give a 60-day free trial of Qualified. So we'll pop up a quick poll, Mihai, if you don't mind doing that. And if you respond yes, we'll be in touch after the webinar and help you get set up. And if not, no harm, no foul, but it's free access to a tool. So if you're also thinking about, skilling and reskilling and upskilling and how to assess that within your organization, you might want to take advantage of the trial. So we'll give everybody just a second to click that. And with that, I am going to say thanks for the time. I really appreciate Alvaro and Mihai, being here to talk through how we do this, how we conducted our remote talent review, kind of the trends and some of the anomalies that we observed, and also how we're leveraging tools like Qualified to give better visibility into the performance cycles. So I want to say to the audience, obviously, a couple things. One, if you have questions, I see a few in the chat. We'll get to them in just a second. Feel free to pop those into the Q&A bar. If you haven't already, I would encourage you to sign up for next month's webinar. Next month is interesting. I'm going to be sitting down with our head of product to discuss the launch of our flagship product, the Andela Talent Cloud. So if you're interested in the whys and whats and hows of the technology platform, next month would be a good time to tune in. And I'll also point you to the resource section. You can download an infographic that has some recent research from Forrester around remote teams. There's a one-page takeaway with some of the learnings we discussed today, and also a blog post for more information. Before I get to let's see, I'm gonna juggle now a little questions in the chat. I think the first one that I would start with is, do the quant and quantitative, qualitative criteria that you guys are using adjust when you're evaluating like a remote distributed team?
I can take that one, Kelly. They're not very different in principle. what we did, how we adjusted for our teams is we went into a lot more detail. We went into a lot more depth. For example, we looked at criticality of role and talent. Another good one is performance, right? The way people usually look at performance in one aspect and come up with one rating. We split them into what you're doing, achieving your KPIs, meeting targets, goals. That's very important. So we rated that. But also how you're doing that, it's equally as important. And this is how we rate folks against our company values, against our competencies. So it's about the depth on how we looked at these criteria.
Got it. Understood. Did you have to get buy-in from the organization on your approach to doing the talent review? Was there any stakeholder management that you had to do?
Not a whole lot. People were very receptive. I think leaders were very excited to understand their teams really well, to understand what are our strengths, what are some gaps that we need to resolve. We did spend time kind of reviewing the criteria, reviewing exactly what we need to get out of it, and reviewing what do we mean when we say performance what and performance how. What do we mean by criticality of role, criticality of talent? So they were very, very receptive and excited about it. And we had really, really productive conversations, actually.
But I read that, Mihai, is that you had to be really precise and crisp on how you were defining the criteria. There was not so much that you needed to get buy-in on what the criteria were, as long as you were really clear about how you were defining them.
Yes. So it wasn't necessarily about buy-in, but about getting alignment, right? So everybody's on the same page. Everybody's discussing about the same things with the same, let's say, guardrails in place, right?
Right. Okay. I just want to say, in housekeeping, there are a few folks who are asking, will a recap of the session be made available? The answer is yes. It will be made available so that you can listen to the webinar in its entirety. So not to worry. And some other questions from the audience, a little bit more perhaps about, managing remote teams. Alvaro, how much time does the team spend on documenting their work steps? You talked at the beginning, I'm sure some of the tech leaders, listening to you talk about how they love Jira and they're really good at it. They're makes them either smile or grimace. But could you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. That is an outstanding question. And I would say that at the beginning, it felt like if you were doing an 80%, 20% analysis, it felt like 80% was just doing documentation for the sake of documentation. But as the team got into a rhythm of doing that as part of their jobs, the team does not feel like they're spending time doing documentation. They understand they're just doing their jobs and documentation is part of it. And it is helpful. The amount of time we get back by just the ability to distribute information across the team because it is documented, people being able to self-serve into questions that they may have about meetings that they missed, has just gave us so much time back and allowed us to work more asynchronously, that I would say that the answer to that question precisely is very little time is spent on just documentation for the sake of it.
Understood. We do have some other questions that we're not going to get to because I want to be sure that we end on time. So I'm going to commit to those of you with questions in the chat that we didn't get to answer. We will follow up with you individually and address those. For now, I'm just going to point you to our survey. Obviously, thanks for your time and attention. Thank you, Alvaro and Mihai, for being willing to share. We would love if you would take just 2 minutes to take a brief survey. Let us know how the webinar was. We would really appreciate your feedback and inputs, obviously, because we use it to help us apply to our future programming and content programming. So with that, I will say thank you very much, and we'll hope to see you next month.